Once the school bell rings, does learning really stop?
Or does the real learning begin the moment we step outside of the classroom?
We spend most of our lives in school, memorizing formulas, meeting deadlines, chasing grades.
But years later, we don't always remember the test questions.
So, what actually makes education quality?
Is it the system, the teachers, the culture, or the way education shapes who we become?
Welcome to Beyond the Bell. I'm Farah,
And I'm Nala.
and this is the podcast where we talk about education beyond textbooks and exams.
Here, we explore how learning looks different across cultures and why quality education isn't the same for everyone.
Because education doesn't end when the bell rings.
It follows us into real life.
And today we were diving into SDG 4, Quality Education, asking a big question. Is quality education universal or deeply personal?
To help us explore this, we are joined by someone who brings a unique perspective on what education looks like in their country.
So let's go beyond the bell and welcome our guest for today, Austin.
Hello, thank you for having me. It's fun to be here. Yeah.
Well, before we start, how about you introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure. My name is Austin. I am from the United States, but I'm also half Hong Kongese. As far as my education is concerned, I grew up in Turkey. Went to an international school where I did the IGCSE curriculum, followed by the International Baccalaureate Diploma Program, which I understand you guys will eventually be doing.
Yeah, the IB curriculum.
Studied philosophy in college, and now I have been in education for the better part of 20 years.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
a long time.
Yeah.
Different countries too, China, Turkey, US, and now Vietnam.
So you're like studying like across the country, across the world.
I have studied in different places in the world, that's right, and I've taught in even more places. Yeah.
Okay. To start things off, when you hear the word school, what comes to your mind?
When I hear the word school,
Yeah.
when I was younger, I actually had a kind of a not great relationship with it. Like a lot of young people, I didn't
Yeah.
like going to school, being forced to do work that sometimes I wasn't interested in.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, when I was younger, I think I got something valuable out of it, and I realized later in life how important that was.
Yeah.
To be able to read, to be able to think through reading and writing, and to be able to think critically, right? To not just believe whatever anybody tells me.
Yeah.
As an educator today, when I think of school, I think that school too often fails young people to be able to do this very thing of critically thinking. And so my role as an educator, I hope to bring those skills, to teach those skills, to have people, to help young people think for themselves.
Yeah, I guess it's like a real problem in
Yeah.
our world that schools usually doesn't improve our skills
Yeah.
sometimes. But
Like the critical thinking, the
Yeah.
discussion. Yeah.
that's why most schools right now is trying to improve that
Yeah.
and try to learn for the better.
And one of that is our school, definitely, and all.
Yeah.
So here we are in the next question.
I heard that you have studied from a lot of countries. So can you like briefly describe what the education system in your country is like?
Sure. As I answer this question, I might actually like to push back a little bit on this idea that most schools do try to teach critical education. In my country, one of my countries, it's hard to say where I'm from, the US, I've seen an active de-evolution of curricula that teach critical thinking. And instead, there have been signs of sort of dogmatic, non-scientific, for example, curricula that's being taught in science classes. That's from my home state of Texas, where they teach that, for example, the theory of evolution in biology classes has equal footing as equal scientific
Yeah.
weight or
That's
value
interesting, you know.
as something as like a holy text like the Bible, for example. And so, in my opinion, many educational curricula are actually teaching people how to just join the workforce
Yeah.
and to be good workers and to be not critically thinking, the opposite. They want you to take orders, they want you to do as you're told. And I think that's a major problem, not just in my country, in the US, but in China, where I have worked before, in Turkey as well, and also in Vietnam. So yeah, I see this as a critical issue in education.
How does technology or internet access affect education in your country?
Interesting question. Again, it's hard to define what my country is per se. Yeah. So I'll just say,
Pick one.
Yeah, I'll say Vietnam right
Okay,
now, where,
Vietnam.
where I live, right?
Okay.
So Vietnam is where I was during COVID, and obviously most places in the world had distance learning protocols.
Yeah.
And so, in fact, Vietnam is a super, especially for a developing nation, very wired country. A lot of people, especially young people, have access to internet. So I think, sorry, the question again is, how does technology influence
Affects your education in your country.
affected? Yeah. So during this time of COVID, I think it was a useful thing that so many
Yeah.
people had access.
It's very useful.
I think there's a lot of underfunding in Vietnam of education. And so I think there are too many places that don't have access to what we would call basic requirements for digital literacy, things like phones that we're using or computers.
Yes.
So I think that the lack of funding in Vietnam, and I don't know hard numbers, I'm not an expert, but
Yeah, okay.
in places like in Vietnam and other places like it, there's probably a lack of funding to give technology to students so that they can learn digital
Yeah.
literacy, which you need to have, obviously, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like we also as a student also use
Yeah.
technology a lot. We bring
Yeah.
our laptop almost every day to school because
Sure.
a lot of
This task, like we have to make an essay or maybe like
poster.
Sure. It's easy to take that for granted that we have
Yeah.
computers, that we have phones, that we have access to the internet, because there's so many places that don't have that. So I'm glad that you guys are, I guess, lucky enough
Yeah.
to have that. Yeah.
like we can just access everything we want to know, you know.
Yeah. Okay. So other than technologies, what challenges do students from rural area, low-income families, or like marginalized group face?
Very good question. I think that what I just mentioned in the previous question, the lack of access to critical technologies like phone, laptops, internet, to bring young people to offer the skills that young people need in order to compete in the workforce. If you don't have access to capital, to money, then you can't have access to those tools that we need to even just to have access to different sources of information, right?
Yeah.
How do we? One key thing about thinking critically, going back to that,
Yeah.
is we need to be able to look at different sides
Yeah.
of a story,
Like perspective.
different perspectives, exactly. And so if you don't have access to those key technologies, then it will
Hard.
hurt the overall
Yeah.
educational outcome. Yeah.
Okay. When you look at education like in other countries, what do you think your country do better?
Okay, I'll choose
Yeah,
my
you can
country
choose.
as the U.S. for this question.
Okay.
I think that despite the, again, degradation of the American public education system, which I think is deliberate. I think the U.S. government in many ways tries to make people dumber. It sounds shocking, but
Yeah.
the dumber people are, the less they learn to question power and the less they learn to think critically, right?
Yeah.
So I actually think it's a major, major issue, and I'm glad that you guys are talking about this. I will say that in spite of that, there is a sort of tradition that I have seen compared to places like Turkey or China, where there is this notion of like rote memorization, right? So this is actually important for learning a language like Chinese, where there's so many
Yeah.
characters and so
Yeah.
many words to memorize in order just to be literate at a basic level.
Yeah.
In order to read a newspaper, you need like a multiple thousands character recognition and multiple
Yeah.
thousands of characters. So part of the Confucian philosophy, part of the necessity of learning the language in a place like China requires rote memorization. You just, here's the thing you need to learn, and then
Yeah.
here's a test to see if you learned it. In contrast, in the US, there is kind of this tradition that comes out of the Enlightenment, like the 17th or 18th century, that teaches us that we can not just learn something that we're supposed to memorize, but rather we can understand knowledge as something that can be measured scientifically, and something that we can verify with our own empirical faculties. So, because of that Enlightenment tradition, there is more of an emphasis on independent thinking traditionally, right? Again, that's being eroded over
Yeah.
time. But does that make sense to you? Do you understand what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, kayak rumor mereka stupid.
Yeah.
Oke. Apa nah?
These are really good questions you're asking so far, so thank you for them. Yeah.
Yeah, because like as a student, we also like want. There's a lot of problems maybe in well, not every education is
yeah.
perfect,
But
but I think by our school changing curriculum to IB is like one of
the
the
hardest,
one of the steps
yeah,
on
to be better
to
school.
be a better school, because
Yeah.
in IB it teaches us
How
on how
to
to
critical
critical thinking, works in project,
Yeah.
rather than just
Individually.
individually
Yeah.
memorizing and then forget the day after the
Yeah.
task. So it's all like it doesn't work in real life.
Yeah,
It's not really important for us if we just memorize something and then forget the day after. So in IB we actually understand
yeah.
more.
And there's like many life skill that IB teaches us, like the open-minded, and then apa ya now? Udah ngapain?
How to be open-minded about
Yeah.
considering something, like for example, a belief that you have, but considering the opposite viewpoint. Yeah, I love what,
Communication, caring, and then apa? Oh, okay.
sure.
Sure.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, it's okay.
I love what you are saying, of your enthusiasm that you're voicing for education. I told you when I was in school, it was hard for me to be enthusiastic about school sometimes. But the fact that you sort of recognize the opportunity that you have is really, really beautiful, and often too rare for young people. And I agree. I did the IB program myself, and I think that I didn't do the MYP, which you're doing now, but I
Yeah.
think that it offers an excellent opportunity to stretch your thinking skills, your critical thinking skills, to broaden your sources of information as you learn. So thank you for sharing that enthusiasm. It makes me feel enthusiastic as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think could be like improved from the learning education?
Can you be more specific? Improved about learning education in what context?
Like, just imagine your principal, and what do you want to do with your school?
That's an interesting question. I was just reading an article, so that this is a very broad question, obviously. I'll focus on one area just to sort of be specific,
Okay.
and make it an answerable, something that I can actually answer. I was just reading an article on how the typical essay that you would write in university is actually dying, right? Like, no longer can we assess or evaluate
Wow.
the writing skills of a student in the same way that we could 2-3 years ago, and beyond that. Why? Because students are using AI to write papers,
Yeah.
right? And so we have had to, I think educators at large, writ large, have had to grapple with how does AI change education? And for writing essays, I teach English literature. For writing essays, that means how do you use resources in a way that's not just plagiarizing what the AI
So like
is
best is that
feeding you?
yeah.
Right. How do we use it? Because AI is an incredible resource,
Yeah.
right? So for writing a paper, you might use AI to ideate, to come up with ideas, but you don't want to use AI just to simply copy and paste. That's not
Yeah.
teaching you anything.
Yeah.
Really. And so the one thing I would focus on if I was a principal is this major question of how do you bring AI into the school in a way that teaches students to think critically. I think you could focus on more like presentation skills, speaking in person and giving ideas that are verbal that you can't just use AI for. I think it could focus on projects like collaboration. I think it could focus on in-class writing assessments as opposed to just doing it at home. But this is a really difficult question, and I don't have a good answer for it. Yeah.
That's a good answer.
Yeah, but it's a good answer too.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate that. I mean, it's something that I think collectively we're all trying to figure out because AI is so new. That's an interesting question, though. Yeah.
Like our school also like remind us to not do like AI things to the bad things, you know.
We have like something
yeah.
called integrity policy.
Yeah, integrity policy and
Like an honor code or
Yeah,
something.
an honor code
like
of
no
AI,
Mhm.
like specifically for AI.
Sure. Well, I mean, it's something that you're going to have to figure out too. Like, I think there is a legitimate use of AI as a student.
yeah.
And so it's just so tempting to like put most of the work into the algorithm or into the LLM. So I think you have to be disciplined as students to be like, first of all, you're following the honor code and the integrity policy. But secondly, like, is using AI cheating you of learning something that you could learn of your own? So you have to have a sort of self-discipline, in your own studies, I think. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Makes sense. Like we should also apply that for our daily life as students.
Definitely.
Awesome. Okay, so the next question will be, what can young people like as a student do today to support SDG4, which is quality education?
What can you as a young person do
Yeah.
to support that goal? Like the global sort of goal?
Yeah.
Well, I would go back to your last question. I think AI in education is the most existential, is the most critical thing to really grapple with. And so I would love to see two young, bright minds as yourselves who care about education, right? You talked about your enthusiasm for the IB. Think about how you can even start locally and improve your own school's policy.
Yeah.
Right? Don't think globally. Think small. Think locally, and you have an insight. Like educators or teachers or administrators, they're thinking from one perspective, but I think the best solution could be collaborative.
Yeah.
Is maybe you taking an initiative to say, hey, we know that AI can be really helpful. We also know it can be a threat.
Yeah.
And then looking at your peers, looking at how they're using AI, noticing how people cheat themselves of an education or how people are using it constructively in a new way. Taking those observations, maybe even doing a survey, doing some kind of research project, and then bringing that to the school and say, hey, we care about this.
Yeah.
These are our findings. How can we work together to come up with an even better policy, right?
New invention.
Right, and then also look at best practices that other schools are doing in your research, in the course of your research, to improve your local situation. That would be my suggestion.
Yeah.
Maybe it's something that we can apply.
Yeah, definitely. So today we have talked about classroom, cultures, and systems.
But I think quality education is more than just a topic. I think it's a responsibility we all share.
Yeah. SDG4 remind us that learning should be inclusive, equitable, and accessible to everyone, everywhere.
Change doesn't start only with the government or institution.
But it starts with us. So as a student, we can use our voices. As young people, we can support one another, share opportunities, and speak up when education isn't fair.
So thank you so much, Austin, for joining us today.
My pleasure. Can I just say one point? You mentioned equitable access to education. I actually do think AI represents an opportunity to make education more accessible, right? Like I think my job as a tutor, I know you just gave your outro, but let me just, this is
Yeah, that's
an
okay.
interesting question. I think AI as a tool can be almost like a replacement for me as a tutor, right?
Yeah.
Like, it knows a lot more than I do because it's like a superhuman thinker. And it has all the sort of totality of human knowledge wrapped into a infinitely patient chatbot that you can just ask questions to over and over again. If you forget, you can just ask over and over. So I think in terms of equitability or equitable access to education, I think AI has a huge potential to revolutionize that aspect of it. And that's actually really exciting.
Yeah.
So I encourage you guys to go down that road of thinking, okay, how can we really use this powerful tool?
Yeah.
But thank you for the invitation. It was a real pleasure to be on your podcast, your inaugural podcast, right? The first one. And I really am encouraged to see two bright thinkers grappling with these important questions and maybe one of, if not the most important topic of our time, which is education. Yeah, global
Sure.
education.
Okay. So, because education doesn't end in the classroom,
It also shapes the future we are building together.
and this is Beyond the Bell. Let's learn, let's act, and let's go beyond the bell. Bye!
Bye.